Gregory.
Hey, Keith,
How
how
are you,
are you?
sir?
Good. Here we are
Well,
again.
here we are yet again. My name is
Yep.
Keith. I'm here with the legendary Greg Hildebrandt. And here today we are discussing being a professional versus art for art's sake. But before we get into that, man, what are you working on? What's behind you?
Uh, Painting of a friend's home. I've just started doing the sky. The house will be in here. This is indeed the house. It's a beautiful structure. It's I see. Let me get this straight here. The original house was early, turn of the century, and they bought it with the hope that they would just have to refurbish it, but the foundation was all rotted, so it had to be completely taken down and reconstructed. And they did it in the same basic architectural design of the original house, which took years to do, and it's really a masterpiece. I mean, it's the kind of construction and detail that you haven't seen for 100
A
years.
long time.
It's incredible.
So are you painting what the original house looked like? Or are
No,
you
this is
painting the
this
new
is
one?
the new house. No, I'm painting their new house.
Okay, cool, fantastic,
So
fantastic.
it's a challenge. I mean, I like painting buildings. I like painting clouds. I like painting everything. So, and it's a little aside. We watched a documentary on Chesley Bonestell, the great space artist, but matte art painter. And I never really studied all of his life that much in detail, but I was really blown away by his architectural renderings. And he was really responsible for the look of the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco and the Chrysler Building.
Oh,
And
okay.
his renderings of buildings are beautiful. Just they're they're fantastic. And so, I mean, you can really take on rendering anything and put as much into it as you put into anything else, which
No,
is part of being a professional.
that is
Take,
that is
Taking
part of being
on any job that comes your way and applying the same enthusiasm as to the thing that you would do for its own sake, art for art's
yeah.
sake. That thing that just grabs you that you want to do, you have to apply the same enthusiasm to be a professional.
Yeah. So, well, your sky's looking amazing, man. I can't wait to see it further down the road when it's finished, so we could actually see how it all comes out, and then you could tell us the different components of that you might apply to like an architectural painting
Yeah,
versus what you would do to a fantasy painting or
sure.
anything along those lines. So, do you got any quotes for us today before
I
we
don't
get
know. I mean,
rolling?
it's like, I don't know if there's anything that applies directly to this. One I like a lot is from Dave Stevens' Rocketeer book.
Okay.
He did these last issues, after he did
Yes.
the film, but his little logo kind of like thing of his bulldog, that little diner that he had, art
Yes.
for art's sake. E slurpus lickum. That's kind of cute. I don't know what
That
that has
is.
to do with what we're going to talk about, but other than that, I mean, quotes. What the hell? I mean, I just kind of looked through this whole bag of stuff. He that troubles his own house shall inherit the wind. King
He the
Solomon.
troubles. That's a good one.
It just. But then there's other stuff too. Here's Viktor Frankl, who was in the Holocaust in the concentration camp. There is no doubt that meaning must be found and cannot be given. That is to say, meaning is something to discover rather than to invent. And another part of it, another quote he has that I wrote down is, as long as a man is still motivated by either the fear of punishment or the hope of reward, conscience has not yet had its say. Viktor Frankl. Whatever that's got to do
That's
with professionalism or art for art's sake, I don't know.
well. I it does. I think it does in a very interesting way, and it might be in the way that the where the term art for art's sake came from. It's like, okay, if you're worried about a punishment or you're creating strictly for reward, uh, are you expressing the artistic mind?
Right.
Are you fully expressing the artistic mind? And I'm going to say that the answer is probably no.
Probably not. Probably no. I would say definitely no. I
Yeah,
mean, you have to get to that place as you were in my thinking as a kid, you know, with all that enthusiasm, with no thought about reward or punishment or anything. Just you're obsessed with and taken by pursuing whatever it is that you're pursuing in the moment, and
yeah,
for
through
its
that.
own sake,
Yeah,
for its own
and
sake, you know.
and I think that that goes across the board in all of the different art forms, whether it's you know, us with the visual arts, or dance, or music,
Yep.
or whatever, that you're exercising that freedom to express your own creative merits and whatever that means, but like with no obligation whatsoever.
Right.
There's no intent other than to do it. And and talking about that, the art for art's sake, that's it's kind of the opposite of what we talked about last week. That when Diego Rivera said all art is propaganda,
Right.
he said art has an agenda, right?
Exact. Oh
It's
my God. Yes. Very much so
to
for him.
persuade you. And
Yep.
then now, the the phrase art for art's sake is saying that art in its truest form has no agenda. It
It's
exists
its own
purely for,
justification.
yeah.
Period.
And again, I think as always with us, we're gonna chat and have a conversation of that's based on experience and fun and time, rather than getting into a truly historical breakdown of what art for art's sake
Right.
means and the socio-political ramifications of what was going on at that time. And
Yep.
you can maybe go to art history class for that. But, so just
Yeah.
really coming into this and saying, what does that mean in the world of professional commercial art? Like, first of all, what does being a professional artist mean to you?
You're able to function under any circumstance and get the job done in time, and to perform to the level that your performance needs to be, and even beyond what it needs to be, to keep the customer satisfied, whoever that customer is, private, industry,
Whoever the customer is, whoever's
it,
holding the purse strings,
who's
right?
ever holding your purse strings. But running parallel with that, you have to also satisfy yourself. You have to in some way find something within this thing. Like, one of the examples I like to use a lot is Tim and I did a toilet training book, which was to say a bunch of black and white ink drawings of this new way these two young pediatricians had come up with toilet training in less than a day. And you had to find some way to take on drawing these little doodles, as it were, with a degree of enthusiasm. I can't remember exactly how I pulled that off. It was 1974 or so, but you have to go inside, and you can't approach it. Oh my God, how the hell am I going to get through this? This is drudgery, you know.
Yeah.
A professional is a person, I guess, I think, who doesn't approach anything that way. That this is drudgery. You have to find that switch, click it, and get enthusiastic.
Now, I'm going to push back on you for just a second, um, because even if it's a job, and you're saying that the drudgery, and you have to push past the drudgery or not see it as drudgery. Have you ever found yourself in a situation of, I really, really, really don't want to do this, but I have to do this because, just like every other person on the planet, you got to go to work,
Got to make a living. Oh yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
that drudgery is just, it's never gone away,
yeah.
but yet you still bring that artistic, the
Right.
technical merit to
No,
it.
no, I've been there. Believe me. Yeah, no, that's been there. And
Hang on one second.
mhm. Okay,
Yeah, can you hear me all right, Greg?
yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes. Yes, I can.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I
early, I'd say in the 70, in 1969, 70, there was a Holt Reiner. Winston was a major publisher of textbooks, readers, schools, readers, and they were
Yep.
redoing all their readers and textbooks. And I mean, a lot of it was, to use the word, drudgery. Kids pouring beakers of water and measuring, and it's just kind of like you couldn't, you had to find something about it to turn you on because it was just so mundane, so to speak, you know.
Yeah.
And you could do that with composition, you can do that with lighting, you can do that with the camera angle, because you could apply the same things to make it a little more interesting that you would apply to something that you get turned on by, lighting,
Yeah.
camera angle, composition, you know. Yeah,
And
and
yeah, so
and
just
and, and I remember the first early lesson that I had right then and there was the art director. There was one of the jobs that we were doing. It was, oh my God, I can't get through this, and kind of slogged it out, brought
yeah.
it into the city because you deliver your artwork back in the day. There was no internet, obviously. Get on the train, go into the city to bring it to the art director, and he's looking at the other work, and he gets to this one. He goes, he just stared at us, Tim and me, like, and I knew damn well it was a piece of shit, and I knew it. It was,
Called you out.
he
called
looked
you
at
out.
us like, and I said, all right, Frank, okay, I got it. I'll redo it. But that was it. I mean, you don't want to ever get that look again from, you know what I mean? Like, come on, you guys, because you're not going to get any more work. So you have to, part of that professionalism thing is you have to stay at a certain level because there's
Yeah.
60, 50, 100 people in line for that same job, and
Yeah.
they should get it, not you, if you're not
Yeah.
going to perform, So that was their big time. We did that. We operated like that for quite a few years on that level, of those kinds of jobs. And then every once in a while, something would pop up where it would be a little more exciting. And
Okay.
But
So when you're in that grind, like you're doing something that you might not be um, particularly jazzed about in a creative sense, right? But yet, okay, so you're attacking the job. You're bringing a level of technical ability to it because it has to look good. At the end of the day, you are a commercial artist, and that's what you do for a living,
yep,
right? And so we got to dispel the notion right now of it the world of commercial art being this hoity-toity, artsy fartsy kind of thing of I do what I want when I want whenever I want,
yep.
and um and it's a job. At the
It,
end of the
it
day, it is still a job.
it's a job. It's a job. I mean, you're. I mean, I like what the of Van Gogh said. He considered himself a worker.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what we do. We're no different than anybody else who does a job. It has to be done. It
And
has to be done properly. It has to be done to the satisfaction of whoever it is you're doing it for. And that's not. I don't care what the hell it is, plumbing or you're
and
basically a worker.
yeah,
It's a
it
craft,
really
a
is.
trade.
It's been that way through art, at least since
Yeah.
predating the Renaissance.
Right.
Those guys, they're all
Definite.
working for the church.
Yes.
And so, they're not just doing whatever they want. I mean, maybe they were, and maybe that work didn't last because it
Well,
was
I mean,
kept in a garage rather than in a chapel. You know,
hardly able to do what you really want while the Inquisition's in full swing.
That's true.
I've got a book on artists on art, and it's like there's one section because they kept careful records back in the day of the Inquisitional interrogation of an artist. Why is that pig in the foreground? It's a Last Supper scene of some kind, and there's all this crazy. Why is that dwarf over there? This guy put in a whole bunch of stuff, and he had some line that he gave them about it. I forgot what the hell it was, but you could just see this interrogation of every detail that's in this scene that he's constructed. That,
Yes.
well, industry does that. I mean, right now with work, I mean, you're not going to get away with anything. You got to do the job. You got to give
Got
them
to do
what
the
they want.
job. Now, do you ever get to a point then where you feel, I really just want to do what I want to do when I want to do it?
Every day, and I get up in the morning and come downstairs in my studio, get my coffee, and come and just start to draw, and that could be anything. I don't care what the hell it is. Just to stay drawing on whatever, it doesn't matter. And
those morning drawings, I've seen a lot of them, and we were posting stuff in the past, like Greg's brain dumps, the cartoons and the expressions and things like that. And to me, those little cartoons that, I mean, I've seen hundreds of them at this point, far more than we've ever put online, really capture the essence of you more than
I mean, because
any of your commercial work.
Yep.
There's it's very interesting dynamic, and if I'm going to toot your horn here a little bit, that it's a very interesting dynamic to me, and I'm going to say to the other people that have gotten to work there in right next to your studio, that we've seen this, an extensive body of commercial work that you have put out and published, and that's what you're known for and what you've gotten famous for, right?
Yeah.
But we've been privy to those doodles and sketches and drawings and the conversations and truly the artist mind that is going on, and it's really been a great experience. I'm trying to find the words, humbling, rewarding, whatever, of being in there and experiencing, Greg Hildebrandt from an angle that 99.9% of the art viewing community doesn't get to see, like, oh my God, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings,
Right. No,
but it's like, yeah, but have you seen Bellboy Baggins? So and in that though, and let me finish my thought, because is that we have seen at least one piece of highly successful commercial art that wasn't intended as commercial art, and that's the painting that everybody knows as The Mob Rules.
Yep. Yeah.
And everybody sees that as Black Sabbath. Had nothing to do with Black Sabbath.
Not a thing.
And we talked about that a little bit in one of the earlier episodes. But to me, that is truly an art for art's sake piece, right?
Oh, absolutely. It was a dream of what I was going that was coming out of probably 1969, of what I was experiencing in terms of a whole changeover that I was going through in terms of, you name it, politics, religion, everything, just a big switch around that, and I was happy that experiencing, and that showed up, and I did a sketch of it, several drawings just to get it down, and those existed for a while, and then finally one day, out of sheer frustration, like doing a toilet training book, out of like, oh my God, I got to do something that has something that satisfies me personally, that it feels at least getting something out. And I started that picture, that painting, and I just kept at it until I finished it, and basically put it aside for a long time. I mean, it never got published until Ballantine Books. And I did a couple other paintings like that too, coming out of the dream. That the next one of this cross being hauled through a garbage dump came out of that space where you're drifting, your conscious mind is leaving you and you're drifting into the subconscious sleep state, where that point is reached, where you're still aware but in this other phase. That image,
Yeah.
that stuff still happens with me, where I can just close my eyes at times and just something just sort of like comes out. I'm not asking for it. I'm not looking for it. I'm not trying to invent what the image is at all. It's there in the subconscious somewhere, and it just sort of comes out. I think that happens to. I think Dolly used to work that way, and other people too. And that image, those images came out of that state. That the first one was in a deep state, though. The of dreaming, you know,
Yeah.
of that Mob Rules, which eventually became Mob Rules, and then it was in an art book that Ballantine Books did on my brother and myself, and that's when Jean and I had just started working together, and that picture was in the book, and she called me in my studio. We weren't together yet, we were separate. She called and she said, she told me that she wanted to license that. Black Sabbath wanted to use that for their album cover, Mob Rules. And I said, no, it's too personal. Don't do it. She hung up and said yes to them. Being like, as she said later, well, her job was to make me a living. You know what I'm saying? So
It's her job. Yes.
That's her
yes.
job. And at first I kind of reacted negatively. What do you mean? What the hell? I didn't want that. And then it's like, well, fine. That's good. Okay. But
Yeah.
no, those things like that just, well, that's how I started working with the Trans-Siberian Orchestra too. I mean, I listened to Beethoven's Last Night, which is the rock opera they did on Beethoven. And I've always been a rock fan. I'm also a classical music fan, particularly Beethoven. And I always loved Beethoven. And so when I heard that music, Gene was going up to bed, and I'm coming down to my studio here, and I'm playing the music, and I'm just drawing, sketching. I ended up with a big stack of color roughs and comps and colored pencil rendering paint, and sort of come out of a stupor, and show it to Jane. She says, "What the hell is this?" And I said, "Well, this is what it is. Play the music." And then I said, I kind of like got practical, sort of like I said, "Do you think we should do something with this?" And she said, "Well, who is it?" And I didn't even look to who produced it. I was only listening to the music. And so I looked.
That's cool.
Paul O'Neill. She gets a number at a recording studio in New York, and I said, "Well, you going to call?" And she said, "No. This is a fanboy thing. You call." Because we've been working together now for a while, and she does all the business, all the phone calls, all the connecting,
Yes.
And so she said, "No, this is a fanboy thing. You're here." So I call this recording studio, and the guy answers, and I ask for Paul O'Neill. He says he's not in today. I give him my name. He takes my number. The next day in my studio, the phone rings, and his voice comes on and said, "Is Greg Hildebrandt there?" And I said, "This is him." And he says, "I can't believe you called me." He's been a fan since the Lord of the Rings back in the 70s. So we start this, "You're the man, no, you're the man, no, you're the man," kind of like thing, And that's how we started working together.
So
but I mean, that art was like coming out of this, it was somebody else's creation, not mine, but still it just took me over, and I made it my own thing because there was no visuals surrounding this thing at all. So and that's why I think you can take on a commercial job, so-called commercial job, like Tim and I did the Lord of the Rings. You just jump into it in some way, grab it, and make it your own thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure how to explain that process, but that's kind of like what you do, you know. You make
Well,
it. You're not just
let me
over
ask you a
here.
question about the rings. You know, after I get this observation, with the TSO, and when you got into that, again, you were creating it initially with no true intent other than to be inspired,
Absolutely.
right? You were inspired, and you were creating, and so you didn't have someone looking over your shoulder per se, um, when you were doing it. And so, going back to the rings for a moment, when you were painting those, how much art direction was going on in that process? Were they like breathing down your neck over stuff, or did you guys have a lot of leeway?
Oh, a lot of huge amount of leeway. I mean, when we did that first calendar, they were using Tolkien's art for several calendars, Valentine books. For, then they had Tim Kirk was an artist. They called a fan artist who had done a calendar. And on the back of the calendar, they said they're looking for anybody artists who want to interpret the rings. And Tim and I
Yeah,
called called the art director, Ian Summers, and he said, "Bring your portfolio, come on over." And we went there, and he had a bunch of artwork stacked up against the walls in his office at Valentine Books in Manhattan, the Random House building. Uh, None of it was. There was not one professional. This is 1975.
hmm,
There was not one professional. It was all fan, high school kids, college kids, stuff like that. And we were the only two professional artists that showed up for the job. So the Judy Lynn Del Rey was the editor, sci-fi fantasy editor, and her husband Lester Del Rey was their resident Tolkien expert. And Lester was a science fiction writer going back to the 50s, and they looked at our work. They approved us. They gave us a challenge at first to do a test job. They gave us a little children's book that Tolkien had written, Smith Smith of Wooten Major and Farmer Giles of Ham. And it was like a guy, a little chainmails, looking at a dragon. More kids to the like cartoony, but we did that. They liked it, and then they gave us the calendar to do, and we plunged into it. Now I'd read the Rings. Tim had read it several times. I'd read it once, and I just we just took it on like making it our own thing. I mean, and they let us alone completely. We did all the layouts for the first calendar because we only had 6 months to do it. We had
hmm,
12 paintings, a centerfold, and a cover. So that's 14 paintings in 6 months from from a blank
yeah,
piece of
yeah,
paper
yeah.
to finished paintings. And so they there was almost not no commentary about anything, and they just approved everything. And then the and that calendar did extremely well. We started to get fan mail for the first time in our career. Now we're like 40 years old by this point, so now we're getting fan mail, and that's a whole new gig, you know. That's a
Hmm.
whole trip. And we started the second calendar, and I approached that. I had been trying to get into the New York gallery scene too. I was thinking of that at the same time. My cat's over here. He's trying to get up on the screen to get involved with this activity. Come on, buddy. Clyde, go to your sister, Bonnie. Come on. And I've been trying to move in that direction of gallery, New York gallery, because it was just one of those things I wanted to pull. I hadn't done yet, so I wanted to see what the hell that was about. And I was taking those paintings, the one that we talked about already, like the dream paintings and various other paintings. I've been painting more photorealistically, like a
Hmm.
friend of mine on his Harley, where I spent like a month just painting the headlight, hyper detail, hyper.
Yeah.
And so I was trucking that stuff around Manhattan. Well, first you send slides around to the galleries, and they send them back, and then Ivan Karp from OK Harris was one of the major art dealers in the day, and he sent me a letter, and he sent the slides back, but he sent me a letter. He said, "Keep at it. You'll find a. I'm not showing this kind of work right now, but keep at it. You'll find a place in the city at some point." And so I did keep at it, and a guy, sort of coincidentally or synchronistically, right across the street from him, a small gallery, asked me to come in, and he's looking at all the stuff. I brought it all in, and he's saying, you're all over the place. You got these dreams, you got this portrait, you got this guy on a motorcycle. You need to make a statement. Give me 20 of these. He points to the guy on the motorcycle. He's like, give me 20 of those? I says, it took me a month to paint the damn headlight. I mean, what are you talking about? Give me 20 of these. You know, I'm supposed to come back in
That's
10 years? And he said, well, you came to me. I'm telling you, you need to make a statement. You have to look like you're focused on one thing alone. And that was never me at all. I never was interested in just one thing alone. My career was there was too many things that interested me just to kind of like just pretend that I was only interested in one thing, you know? So I went back and I basically said to him, all right, let's go after the rings. And that's how we ended up, you know, calling Ian that.
but that's interesting, and and tying that into what we were talking about, the art for art's sake. I think a lot of people uh, have a thought in their mind that if you're a fine artist or a gallery artist, you're doing whatever you want, you know. But as you're saying there, that guy had very specific direction.
Oh
Now,
no,
if I'm going to show work, I want 20 of these.
it's a crock of shit. Can I use that word? With this
Use whatever
negative
word you
put down,
want.
with this negative, what are you? I used to get that crap. Most illustrators, what are you, a commercial artist? Well, I hope so. That means I'm getting paid for it. It's commerce. You know, you do this, you get paid for it. What? It's like that stuff, gallery stuff, is not sold. An artist is not making money off of this. You know, it's like this. There has to be this hierarchy always with the human race. The top and the bottom. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
this is thumbs up, that's thumbs down. Bullshit.
It is a weird, but it's also vice versa. It's also very much vice versa, that there are a lot of people in the um, commercial art world, and what I'm most familiar with would be not the advertising stuff I'm doing, but being around the comic book stuff, is that comic books are the only thing that's any good, and anything that's abstract or over here sucks. It doesn't look like anything. And it's like, oh, maybe you don't understand what's going on. So it's a two-way fight that makes no sense.
No, you're right. There's put on the boxing gloves and go bam, bam. You know, it's like
there's enough paper and canvas to go around.
There
we
is.
can all draw.
Absolutely.
We can all draw.
Absolutely, totally. The thing is, you choose certain things that turn you on, and that's what turns you on, and then you pursue it. I mean, to call one thing great and one thing less than is bullshit. You know?
Yeah, it's just simply different. Now,
That's it.
you might not be something that turns you on aesthetically. Like, oh, I'm going to take that, I'm going to hang it in my house. And that's okay. That's okay that if you're, attracted to sequential art versus abstract art, or you like abstract art versus
Right.
the 10 millionth picture of Spider-Man.
Right.
You know?
Well, you're saying like Keith, you're saying that there's a certain group that says the only thing that there is sequential art or comic art, and the other stuff is crap. That was a reverse conversation we know from the past. I mean, all comic art was looked at as crap. It was disposable junk. That was a whole heavy duty conversation. I'm sure that conversation still may be there with some people. I'm not sure, but I don't really give a damn. But that's the thing that I never could get. I never got as a kid. I never got as a young guy, or don't get now. Is that you have to categorize this. You have to put down comic art to build this up over here. You have to tack this to build this up.
Yeah.
Just shut up. Just do your thing.
just yeah. You do you, and we can all just be. And it's the interesting thing, though. The interesting thing to me in that line of conversation, in the gallery world versus the comic book or illustration world, and it's this is a generalization, it's not everybody, but there's more of a focus on the artist in the gallery world. Like, oh, I have to buy this person because they're the next hot
Right.
artist,
It's
or I really like this person's art, so I'm going to buy their art. But
right.
the
The
name
name
is
is
the
everything.
focus.
The piece of work can.
Whereas in the comic book world, now again, not to everybody. There are the higher tier uh, people, but it's more about the character.
Yeah.
Like if like there's people like I'm really into Spider-Man, I'm really into the Hulk,
Right.
and or the world of Magic the Gathering. They're really into a specific card because it does a specific function,
Hmm.
and the artist's name doesn't really matter so much.
Yeah.
Which that's a very interesting dynamic in that it's like, oh well, if you're a well-known commercial artist, but you're doing something that's not commercial or not what you're known for, I'm not really interested.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
that also doesn't make sense to me. It's like, well, do you like it as a piece of art? you know, like, do you like it? Like, yeah, I know it wasn't published, but do you like it as a piece of art?
Right.
Like,
There's all
huh?
kinds of criteria like that, right? Is it published? Is it
Yeah.
published? Is it a cover? Is it an interior? Is it a, you know, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, like, but it never really enters into the conversation too much of like, man, it's awesome. I want it because it's awesome.
Yeah.
You
Well, I
know,
mean, people that really know art love it because they love it. They don't care
mhm.
what the hell it is. And I know,
Yeah.
a person like that. She's just totally obsessed with art, and she doesn't ask questions about. It can be a kid, and a total amateur, so-called amateur.
Yeah.
And or it
But if
can be
it's good, it's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. And if she likes it, you know, I like it, and that's way, that's hopefully the ideal situation.
Yes. Yeah. Now, kind of circling back around into the professionalism and the art for art's sake, and we talked about you getting up in the morning and you're still drawing, and there are those moments where uh, you're able to create without the art director
Right.
looming.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
do you find, I don't know if you've thought about this at all, that your most consequential work, right? They're the works that maybe define you or that you're pleased with 5, 10 years down the road. Um, are they works that where you've had a little bit more freedom to create? Works where there was no art direction at all, or works where someone was truly just like Star Wars. You had to be very specific,
Oh,
not the
there's
poster, but like
yeah.
the shadows set, where it's
No, it's
very specific character designs and things like that.
well, that the challenge there is to keep keep the customer satisfied. Now with this personal stuff, I find that those are the things you pointed out. We were having a conversation once, and I never feel like I am completely fulfilled or satisfied with anything that I do. It's always there. That conversation's always there, that kind of thing. But especially with jobs like comic jobs, say, I never feel personally totally satisfied with that. And you had pointed out the possibility, and I was more satisfied. Let's just say with my own stuff, my own paintings, my own
Yeah.
drawings. You pointed out the possibility that it could be that there's nothing to compare it to. In other words, that's just me doing my thing. But when I'm doing something like, say, for Marvel, or you know, that there's a lot of comparison, that character that I've just done, and that scene that I've just done, and that layout, in that composition I've just done. There's a lot of comparison out there for people to say, well, that's here. That's not as good as this. Maybe that's
Yeah.
going on with me.
Yeah. And just, I mean, we talk a little bit more specifically about that, with like drawing Captain America, you know, like,
Yeah,
there's been a lot of guys that have defined that character,
yeah, there
you
are.
know, that's implanted in my brain, and I'm sure implanted in your brain of
Yep.
what Captain America is supposed to be. And even though you're doing it, your vision is still not what your vision of Captain America is supposed to be.
Right.
I'm just using that as an example, not necessarily
Yeah.
as.
Well, yeah, I just as a little aside, I had a particular interest in Captain America. Well, that's from my time frame as a kid, growing up. Uh, but I knew Joe Simon. He and I were friends for
Yeah.
like 14 years, so I had a personal connection to Captain America through Joe, and so I kind of like that. That character meant a lot to me from that point of view, And I did a cover for the 75th anniversary. I done a drawing. I wanted to paraphrase his in Jack Kirby's cover of that first book where Cap is busting in and giving Hitler a right hook, and I just kind of like did a painting of that. Not that I was copying their painting. I just did my take on it, and I did that just for me. I
Yeah.
didn't do it as a job for Marvel at all, even though I've been doing stuff for Marvel already, covers now,
Yeah.
And stuff, and many cards in the past. And but I just did that for myself. I wanted to do it because I knew Joe, and it was the 75th, and I wanted to just kind of do my take on that. And then it got used. Marvel used it for a cover, but that came out of, again, it was somebody else's creation, but I really approached it like I had to do this thing. I just got to do this.
There was a drive. There was a
Yeah,
drive to do it.
yeah,
And there's a very clear distinction there of I have to do it or I have to do it.
yeah. And
You know what I mean?
I'm not
It's
saying,
like, I gotta do it or I have to do it.
yeah,
Like
and
I
I'm not
need to do it.
right. And I don't know if one's ends up as a better picture than the other. I'm not. I'm the last person
Well,
to go and make that. You know what I mean? It just
well, look at your art. Going back through your career, long career,
long
right?
career.
Um,
1958.
do you look at stuff and you're like, okay, I feel like I took a step forward there, or I advanced there,
Yeah.
or I captured something there.
Or sometimes I'll look at something that I did 40 years ago and say, "Oh my God, that's better than what I'm doing now."
Yeah,
Like I have
and
a painting of a barn upstairs that I did. It's just like painted with airplane dope. That was the dope that you painted model airplanes with back. I probably did it when I was 8 or 9 or 10 years old. And I said, geez, look at there's something about the simplicity of it, the structure, the values, and the
yeah,
composition that are just like right there. I mean,
boom, yeah, and so when you do that, are you finding at those milestones in your own career from your own opinion, are they from work that that you were really jazzed about at the time, or you didn't necessarily, did you go into any of it not necessarily thinking it would be much of anything, and it turned into something?
yeah, I mean, both ways, always. Yeah. Uh, I'm thinking of stuff happens. Like we painted the rings, right? I never had neither Tim or I ever had a course in painting. We went to art school for six
Yeah.
months in Detroit, and it was a basic course, 6 month basic course of color and design. There was no painting; it was just the concept of color and design, and uh, life drawing and anatomy and perspective. And uh, also, the other piece of information in terms of art education that we had, and in that course, Bill Meinzinger, who owned the school, said he taught the color and design course. He said if there's a warm light on a subject, there's a cool shadow. If there's a cool light on a subject, there's a warm shadow. That gave us our basic foundation. That was a leap in a direction. That because when you're painting a
Hmm.
picture from the highlight to the shadow area, a lot of people as a kid was just adding black into the darkest area. And no,
Yeah.
there's color here and there's color here. This is basically a warm light hitting me. The shadow gets cool, and you look at it, you say, well, that doesn't look cool. It doesn't matter whether it looks cool to your eye. You have to understand that it is cooler, period. That's the way light
Yeah.
works in nature.
Yeah.
So that was a leap in a freaking direction that was like, if I didn't hear that one sentence from this man, I don't know what the hell I would have done, you know? Also, we went to see the Kirk Douglas, Vincent Minnelli Lust for Life movie on Van Gogh.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Yep.
there's a scene in there, I think, if I remember right, where Kirk Douglas as Van Gogh is talking with the artist as Pizarro, and they're sitting outside, and the Pizarro is saying, "Look, the shadow of the leaves and the trees. There's color everywhere. There's color everywhere. Throw away your black." So Tim and I said, "Ah." So we went home and threw away our black. We said, "Well, how the hell do we get to a dark now?" Then when Meinzinger talked about cooler, well, all right, so it's a warm, that it wasn't all through the rings. The darkest dark that we could come up with when we went to the store to start to buy our paints. Like we'd look at all we work with acrylic, and I had no education in it. Look for all the paint, get to burnt umber is dark, you know. So
Yep.
that would have been, generally speaking, in all those pictures of the rings, the darkest color that we went to. So that's what unintentionally gave the paintings the look of this older Middle Earth quality because it only went to burnt umber. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Which then defined that fantasy genre.
And that was only because I didn't know how the hell to get to another darker dark until while working on Ursharak, our story, painting our allied band, we were trying to get to a dark that we didn't want to go. We wanted a more chromatic scale up the chroma to this painting, not keeping it more subdued. How that you can do that by going to a dark, but no, we're not using black. What are we using? We went to the store, checking out darks, found dioxazine purple, which is this intense, deep purple.
Yep.
That was a revelation. By
And that did shift the work to the more poppy colors. Like it's not this subdued earthy. Then things started to.
that's what we applied then to the Marvel masterpieces too. We just cranked up the chroma scale, and by using that as your darkest dark, you're pulled into, more or less cranking up your chroma.
Yeah.
And those are, those are leaps. And then I started. Then Tim and I split for a while. We didn't work together for a number of years. So I was trying out different things, even other than purple, to get to a darker dark. And I was trying, straight. What the hell was it? Phthalo green once, just to see what would happen if I went to just to paint it to straight phthalo green out of the tube, or straight phthalo blue. Those intense blues and greens.
Yeah.
And you, you could make it. And then there was a calendar. Then Gene and I started working together, and we did. She contracted with, who the hell was the publisher? I forgot. Did Mary Stewart's Merlin. Mary Stewart was a later. She wrote 3 books on Merlin, which kind of read like the reality before the myth. But they were great books, and I illustrated those with the concept of taking on the pictures of to use as less white as I could. If I could just use the
Okay.
straight colors out of the tube without cutting them, in terms of making the lighter values with white, use the color right out of the tubes. So that's a whole mental, juggling act, a structural thing that you have to get into. But I like doing that kind of thing. I mean, I know I'm segueing off into stuff
That's
here,
fine. That's fine.
but
Uh,
experimenting around and kind of like moving into the white space, the unknown, where there's nothing there, and as opposed to only repeating yourself. Granted, you repeat yourself. I mean, you're going through life and you're accumulating all your information in this bag that you're carrying around with you because you're learning and you're playing. But it's always an effort to try to keep breaking out of that too. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
To not only just to fall back on what you already know. whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've got what, well over 4,000 pieces of art hanging out around you.
I
You humans only change so much, and you're always doing the figure, so you've got to look at new ways to try to.
Yeah, I went through a period. I remember once thinking, well, maybe they're right. Maybe that guy was right. Maybe I should focus and specialize because in order to become an expert at anything, you have to stay with it all your life. This one thing, and and I said maybe that's my problem. Maybe that's not why I feel like I haven't got it right yet because it's like I'm not sticking with one thing long enough. I went through that whole kind of a period, kind of like thing. And I
Yeah.
think, well,
And
nah.
now I go back to, in the, you referenced our conversation, and there is the elements of when you're doing your own thing, there's nothing else to compare it to, but more importantly in those is that you're putting a piece of you into it. Like, again, we'll call it the mob rules just for the sake
Yeah.
of conversation, but that didn't exist anywhere else. It didn't exist. Your brain fully realized that into the world, you know. So we're getting a true representation of a Greg Hildebrandt dream.
Yeah.
And you have the technical ability to capture what's in your head. That's the first thing. You have the technical ability to do so. And the other one you mentioned of carrying the crucifix through the junkyard. It's you. There's you're in it. You're giving
Yeah.
of your emotions. You're making an investment into the work of art that isn't just technical ability, but you're investing emotion into it.
Yeah.
You know, and I will even say the ones that became like those two, like Mob Rules became very commercially successful way after the fact because of Black Sabbath, but not necessarily commercially successful for you in the terms of the licensing, you know,
Right.
things like that.
Well,
That's
that's a whole other
another
story.
conversation. But
Well, I mean, I thought it was just as an aside, just a little bit of an aside. I don't know. Maybe we talked about this before. Their fan page called once several years ago, saying, "What's this thing, Kill Ozzy, that you wrote in the corner of the picture down here in the garbage in the junk?" I said, "What the hell are you talking about?" And I was on the phone with the guy, and he said, "What do you mean? What am I talking about?" I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "In the bottom it says Kill Ozzy. Ozzy. Why did you put that in there?" I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, I didn't I I I didn't know who Ozzy was back. That was a dream I had. I gave him the story. This is what a dream, and it was in an art book. And they called Jean, and she gave him the job to do. I have no idea what you're talking about. And the guy was really perplexed, and he said, "Well, it's in there. We got it on our website." Jean goes to the website, and there they had it circled in the corner. It's all the garbage and the trash. And Kill Ozzy, and I said. And then he says, "Well, what should I do?" He was kind of perplexed. And I said, "Did you ever see the movie The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance?" As to where, Jimmy Stewart gets all the credit for shooting the bad guy, Liberty Valance, but it's not really him. It's John Wayne from The Shadows who shot Liberty Valance. And the Jimmy Stewart character goes on to be a great big politician in the world. And he's doing this interview with this news guy, and the guy's perplexed. And what should I do? Well, when faced with printing the truth or the legend, print the legend. So that's what I told the guy.
print the legend. Now
Well,
it's
I'm
time to
sure that
dispel the myth.
I'm sure, I don't know. I never followed through on it. They probably, if he told the real story, I'm sure the people would have still kept believing that I was lying. Because once
Yeah,
a lie
yeah,
goes
he's
out there,
absolutely crushed by it. He's
once a lie or a misinformation goes out there, and it sinks into so many minds, it becomes real. They
becomes
treat it
real.
as this is reality. It can be revealed exactly that it's not. Here it is. Here's the hardcore evidence in front of your freaking eyeballs, and they still won't believe it.
No, it's easier to believe Diozzi.
it's, it's more compelling and dramatic and whacked out, you
Yes.
know.
And that seems like a perfect place for us to call our conversation for a day, but then to move on to all of the business side of things,
Yes.
and to say for anybody that's viewing this now or later, I know that what I was doing earlier in the stream was looking a little funky to me. I had to go to Restream, and they're having an issue broadcasting to Facebook. So hopefully people are able to watch this live on Facebook. I don't know. People are able to watch it live on YouTube right now, and people will catch it in the post for sure. So if people were commenting and we're not acknowledging those comments, we apologize. There's some kind of issue going on. But if you like what we're doing, hey, hit the like button, hit the share button, drop us a line, give some comments. We like the feedback from people, and we truly appreciate it. If you want to see more of Greg's art, go to right there on the screen, www.spiderwebart.com. And also, we want to announce, I don't think we have any there with you, but we've got a couple new 10 signs coming out, right?
Yeah.
Have you seen them yet?
Yeah, I have. They're fantastic.
Yeah,
And
they look fantastic.
They do a great job out there, man. I'm telling you.
So
Producing them,
everybody, look for those coming. We put them up on the website today as pre-orders. They're based on An American in Paris and also Hollywood or Bust. So you can see them online. We're taking pre-orders now. We're going to put that out in an email so you could just go to the link and buy. But anything else you want to say, man?
I just want to thank you, Keith, and remind everybody that Keith is a fantastic artist of his own right. He does all the questioning here, but Keith's work is incredible. I love it.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Other than that, adios, amoebas.
All right. Have a good night, Greg.